Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mr. Benris. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to Adobe Photoshop, kind of how to use it, what to do here in desktop publishing. This will be a good introduction. So what I would really like you to do today is have your headphones um, and then just kind of follow along with the video. And I'm going to go step by step on the things I want you to try, the things I want you to do. But for starters, we need to open up Photoshop. So what you're going to do, and it's going to look a little different on your screen because you guys have Windows 7 instead of Windows 10. But you're going to want to click down here, and it should be up near the top of the list that comes up. But you want to make sure that you're opening Adobe Photoshop 7.0, not Image Ready. When you click it, because it's the first time you guys are going to be opening it, there's going to be a couple of dialog boxes that pop up for you after it opens. One's going to ask you if you want to set a color profile. Hit no. I think the other one asks you if you want to set the scratch drive. You don't want to do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you have Photoshop open is press Control-N. And that's going to let you open up a new document. So the new document dialog box is going to open up here. Let's change the name to Practice. And then we're going to change the width. We're going to do ours in pixels. So change those to pixels. Change your resolution to 300 pixels per inch. Anything that you do digitally that you would ever want to have printed, the minimum resolution for it to really look good when it's printed out is 300 pixels per inch. If you're doing something that's web-based, they're going to be displayed basically only on a computer screen. 72 pixels per inch is okay, which is the default setting. But we're going to assume that all of these will eventually be printed, even though they might not. So set the resolution to 300 pixels per inch. And let's make a document that's 2000 by 2000 pixels. So let me just kind of give you an idea of what the different tools are and kind of what you're seeing on the screen right now. On the left side over here is your toolbar. And you're going to hear me talk about the toolbar all the time. I'm going to say things like top right tool in the toolbar, top right tool in the toolbar. This is what I'm talking about over here on the left. In the center here is your workspace. Gray is just the background color. If you want to maximize your image that you're working on in the workspace, you can just click the maximize button here in the window. You can see you can bring it back down small again. It gives you kind of a little miniature minimize, maximize, and close options up here. Once we have it up, that'll be your workspace. That's where you're going to do all the things you're going to do. Over here on the right side is the Navigator. And we'll get more into the Navigator in a little bit. This is the color selection panel over here, and you'll notice that if I pick this nice turquoise color here, over here is my foreground color in the toolbar. And foreground color, if you were to use the paintbrush or the pencil tool, that's what's going to, which we will, the paintbrush or the pencil tool, that's what's going to make those show up. And then lastly, or second to last here, we have the history dialog box. And if you can go back a few steps, you can't go back infinitely like you can with Microsoft Word. But if you get a little ways into a project and make a mistake, you can always use the history panel here to go back. And then the last one, and you're going to use this one a ton, this is the layers panel. The layers panel is right over here, and let's make a new layer to start. So I'm going to press Control, Shift, and N at the same time, and that will bring up the new layer dialog box. I'm going to call this layer Outline for right now. Okay, so we've got our dialog box here, or our workspace here. And the first thing we want to do, I want you to do, is just take your paintbrush tool. I want you to make sure that you're working on a new layer. Again, it's Control, Shift, N, as in Nancy, to open that up, and that'll create a new layer. Naming the layers as you go is a great way to keep things organized. So this one is going to be called, I called it Outline. You can call it whatever you want, because the first thing we're going to practice is using some selection tools. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, and if you right-click in the workspace, it'll bring up this diameter slider, and you can change the size of your paintbrush. You can also select from different paintbrushes in this list. Anything with a fuzzy edge will be kind of airbrushy and blurry. Anything with a hard edge will be more like what you probably used in my MS Paint in computers class in previous years. So I'm going to just do a solid edged brush here, and I'm just going to draw a pink blob. So again, because it's on its own layer, it's not interfering with the background. And for every project in this class, you should be working with separate layers as often as possible. You'll learn. If you don't remember Control-Shift-N by the end of this thing, it makes a new layer. By the end of this thing, I've failed. So the first tools we're going to learn about are the selection tools. So over here in the top left of the toolbar are your selection tools. If you right-click, it brings up a different selection. Now, the single row marquee tools really aren't very useful, but the rectangular marquee tool is good if you are trying to crop a rectangular part of an image and move it. For the purposes of right now, I'm just going to click and drag and make a selection here in my pink blob. You can see the marquee kind of moves around the outside of whatever shape I've selected. I always call it ants marching. So if the ants are marching around it, you're good to go. If you want to have a perfect square, if you hold down the Shift key while you click and drag that shape, it will make a perfect square. Likewise, well, let's just do rectangular marquee. So I'm going to hold Shift, I'm going to click and drag and select a small square here. Now I want to move that square, so I need to use what's called the Move tool, which is up here in the top right. Or you can press the V key and it will select the Move tool for you. One important thing is to always click, make sure Show Bounding Box is selected up here at the top when you select the Move tool. Because that will let you not only move the piece that you have selected, but you can also use the corner and sides here to resize or to reshape. When resizing or reshaping anything, if you hold the Shift key, it will keep the proportion of what you are trying to change the size of. So I'm just going to move my square out over here. Once it's done, if you click the check mark up here, it will confirm your transformation that you changed. If you don't like the size that you made it, so let me resize it again a little bit. If you don't like the size that you made it, hit the cancel transform. If you don't resize it at all you've got to do is click somewhere blank with the marquee tool and it will deselect. Another option in the marquee tool is the elliptical marquee. And the elliptical marquee makes a rounded shape. Same as holding Shift makes a square when you select. Holding Shift makes a perfect circle when you select with the elliptical marquee tool. But again, I want you to make a selection of the blob that you drew and then use the Move tool to move that blob somewhere outside of your shape. You can resize a little if you like. I'll make mine a little bit bigger here. And then again, just hit the check mark and it will accept the transformation. Now, you do need to get rid of any marching ants that you have after you've moved a selection. And I say the best way to do it, if you have the gray background visible anywhere, it's got to be inside the workspace of what you're working on. But if you click in the gray background, it will deselect and the ants will be gone. Another selection tool is the Lasso tool. And there are a couple other options here in the Lasso tool. The first is just regular lasso, and that lets you kind of draw a free-form shape to select with. So draw a free-form shape. I'm going to resize a little bit, move it outside of your blob here, and apply the transformation, and you're all set. The polygonal lasso tool, if you click, everywhere you click, it makes like a little anchor, and this will have very straight sides. Again, just another way to select things. And then the last is the magnetic lasso tool. And it's not perfect, but it will kind of stick to the edges of things where colors are very different from one another. So you can see if I go too far in, it'll stick to the pink, but for the most part, it was sticking to the outside. And this is not going to end well. But magnetic, you're not going to find a lot of useful situations for it during during DP. And then the last selection tool is the magic wand tool. And it's great in situations like this where everything is only in two different colors. If I just have a picture of a pink blob on a white background, it's going to very easily select just the pink. But when you get into a more complex image, let's see what I got. Somebody's drawing from last year. If I try to then use the magic wand tool here, say in the blue or in the pink, it leaves, I'll zoom in here, it leaves a little bit of a gap. So if I were to try to just delete the pink, we lose, you get some extra artifacts is what it's called, where you have a little bit of the pink still showing in spots. You can see around the lips here, around the eyes. So it's not the magic wand is kind of a lazy person's selection tool solution. It'll work in situations where you're only working with two colors, but like I said, when it gets more complex, it really has some challenges. So that is the introduction to selection tools. Again, draw a blob with the paintbrush, use the rectangular, the elliptical, the lasso tool, and the polygonal lasso tool to take some shapes and then use the move tool to move them outside of your blob. And that'll do it for your introduction to selection tools. Next, we're going to move on to something a little more complicated. Okay, once you're done with your blob shape, so I want you to make a blob, I want you to pull a circle out, I want you to pull a square out, I want you to pull a lasso and a polygonal lasso shape out of your original shape. Once you're done with that, what I'd like you to do is to save it. So unlike last year when we were able to save things directly to OneDrive and all that stuff, we can't really do it here. So what I want you to do is go to File, then go to Save As, or you can just press Control-Shift-S, and it will do the same thing. On your desktop of your computer, PSD is the basic Photoshop document, and as you're working on a project, you're going to work from a PSD pretty much every day, but when you're done with the final image, so when you're finished with everything, I'm going to start by just saving my practice file here. But when you're done with everything on your image, PSD you can't put into a PowerPoint, you can't put it in a Word document, you can't insert it into anything else. The only program that can read that file format is Photoshop. So if you want to be able to, say, put something cool that you made in here on your phone and be able to show it to people, you have to change the file type to something that's universally readable. The file type we use in here with finished files, so say this was one you were done with, you're ready to share it with me on Google Drive, you're going to change the type to PNG, and Photoshop automatically adds the word copy to what you're doing so that you know the one that's copy is the one that you're finished with and ready to turn in. So while we're at it, let's upload that. Okay, so we need to log into Google. So what I'm going to do is just get myself logged back in here. I'm going to put in my password. Not. Once I'm logged in, I'm going to go to drive.google.com. So once you're in there, what I need you to do, first thing you're going to want to do, and now you can see my drive's already a mess, but this will probably be one of the first things you're going to do on Google Drive. I want you to click New and Folder. And what I want you to name this folder is your initials. I'm going to create that folder. Then the first thing I'm going to do with that folder, because this is where you're going to upload any work that you do and complete during this class. Once that's up there, I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to click Share. And then I just want you to type in my name. And once you do, it'll bring up my username and click send. And what that'll do is send me an email letting me know that you shared your desktop publishing folder with me. If you double click on that folder, you can then get to it. Now we've been saving our things to the desktop in that folder we created called practice images. And then what I want you to do is all you got to do is find your practice images folder, find your practice copy.png. It won't say .png, but you'll notice if it's a Photoshop file, Windows can't show us what it looks like. But if it's a PNG, it can. So that's one way also to know whether you're selecting the correct file. And if you hover over it, you can see it says PNG file. I'm going to take that, I'm going to click and drag it, and then all you got to do is drop it into your folder on Google Drive. And there it is. All right. So we're done with our selection tools. So what I want you to do now, and this will be good practice, if you have your workspace where you can see the background, and let's get zooming in and out of the way. If you hold the Control key and the Alt key down together and use the mouse wheel, it will zoom out and it will zoom in. Pretty sure on yours, down will zoom in and up will zoom out. And this is a good time to talk about the Navigator. If you look in the Navigator, you have a little thumbnail image of your workspace. And if you click and drag this red rectangle around, it will take you all around your picture to a spot you might want to be working on if you're zoomed in. So again, Control, Alt, and mouse wheel up will zoom you out. Control, Alt, and mouse wheel down will zoom you in. Likewise, you can use the zoom slider over here on the Navigator. But what I want you to do right now is get zoomed out to where you can see gray around your workspace. I want you to take the rectangular marquee, so make sure and right click and reselect it. And I want you to click and drag, select that whole picture, and press delete. And it will get rid of everything that you've done so far, but that's okay. Or alternatively, just delete it. It's cool. Let's delete. All right. Let's talk about copying and pasting images, because this is something you're going to want to be able to do while you are working on this project. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look up a picture of Justin Bieber. He's awesome. And we are going to get his, he looks just like Miley Cyrus. That's hilarious. Anyway, let's get a picture of J Biebs we can actually click on. So here's how Google Images works if you're not familiar. When you search for an image, it'll bring up, multiple instances of that image. Here are some other tools you might not know about. If you click on Tools over here on the right, you can change what size picture you want to find. And size for us has to do with pixels. Here, this one is 977 by 1200 pixels. So they usually give width first, so 977 pixels wide by 1200 pixels tall. So let's see if we can get to that image. We can. And what I'm going to do is right-click on the picture, and I'm going to choose Copy Image. And if I go back to Photoshop, easy way to paste in Photoshop. You can't do it like Microsoft Word and right-click. You need to hold Control and press V, and that'll paste your picture of J Biebs right into your drawing, right into your workspace. The key here is to make sure that you click View Image. Some of these, I can tell, are blocked by the school. So this one, can't get to this image. So you can see how it's all blurry here. Even though the pixel size is big, if I can't get to the main image and it's blurry here, it's going to be blurry when I import it into Photoshop. So remember, as you're looking for photos and projects that we're going to use photos in, find ones that the pixel size is close to the pixel size of the document you're working on. In this case, if it's already blurry here, it's going to be blurry in your project. And we want our images to be crisp, regardless of what we're using. And just a quick note on copyrighted images. Almost every picture that you find on the internet is copyrighted, meaning it's owned by someone, whether it's a TV station or an individual photographer or some company. For our situation, we're students, we're not using these documents that we're making for resale, we're not trying to sell these to make money. So it's really okay for us to use whatever images we like. But as you get, if you were to continue in a career or in an educational path using and doing digital art, you have to be careful about what images are copyrighted and what images are not. So keep that in mind, especially if you go forward with this. It's really, it's against the law to use images that belong to someone else for you to make money with. Now, for us, like I said, we're just using these to make art projects. We're using these, in an educational setting, so it's not as big a deal. All right, Beebs, let's head on back to Photoshop here. So here's our picture of J. Beeb. If I want to resize this to fill the space, and I just click and drag the corner, we end up with Mr. Bieber being a little bit wider than he really is in real life. So like I was saying before, if you want to keep the proportion of the original image, hold down Shift and click and drag like that to resize. And if you do it that way, no big deal. There's a limit to how big you can make images, though, because eventually they'll start to get blurry. So say I wanted it to just kind of be his eyes and his nose. We zoom back in here to start looking more closely or working more closely with it. You can see it's starting to get pixelated. So resizing down is always okay because your pixel count will stay consistent. You'll still have a high resolution. You'll still have a good resolution image. Making things larger doesn't work as well. And you may have noticed this on your phone if you're trying to take a photo with your camera on your phone and you zoom in using digital zoom. You lose some of the image quality when you zoom in because it's pixelizing it. Basically, it's just kind of the pixels kind of invent what's there, and it just doesn't look great. So anyway, that's copy and pasting an image. So what I'd like you to do for this part is just copy and paste an image somewhere from Google into your Photoshop document, and then I would like you to save it. Then once we have JBeebs saved, I want you to also, or you won't have JBeebs, but whatever picture you found copied and pasted into Photoshop, I want you to take that PNG, I want you to upload that to Google Drive as well. And again, all you've got to do is click and drag it, drop it into Google Drive, and you should be set. Okay, let's move on to the next thing.